All right, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us for today's event. So, in today's event, we'll be looking at overview of compliance tools, talking about Azure Policy and Azure Blueprints. So, this event is brought to you by the Nigeria Azure community, where we discuss everything around Azure infrastructure, Azure DevOps, Azure security, as well as Azure AI. So in today's session, I'll be discussing, like I mentioned, overview of compliance tools, talking about Azure Policy and Azure Blueprints. So let me quickly introduce myself. My name is Emmanuel Itoje. I'm a Microsoft MVP as well as a Microsoft certified trainer. And today I'll be your host for this event. For today's event, we have one of our MVPs in the house too that will be actually be taking us through this particular topics in person of Mr. Raf Gabmomo is also a Microsoft MVP, as well as a senior cloud and FinOps engineer. He's a career coach, he's a cloud computing trainer, he's also a technical writer. So it's a pleasure to have you on board today, Mr. Raf. Thank you
Thank you
everyone
very
for
much.
joining us. I can see Daniel on the call. I can see Jacob as well as Imo. Thank you so much for joining this session. In the chat, I wanted to use the chat window, just introduce yourself, where you're joining us from, your expectations for this session, and so that we can have a conversation there. So thank you so much, Mr. Ra, for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you today. I'll be passing the mic to you. Over to you.
Yes, welcome everyone. Welcome to this meeting. Now, before I start talking about Azure policy and the overview of Azure policy, I'm going to give you something that I experienced while working on a project that the company did not observe policies. Okay, so there was this because the company where I worked, there was a particular company I worked with. What the company does, they handle projects of other companies. So there was this particular uh, UN agency. United Nations have a lot of agencies. So there was this particular agency that the company got their workload for 2 years to manage their workload. Now, the company has only two IT staff, okay, two IT staff, but my company does the work, and those two staff were just to follow up. So they had a cloud storage bucket that they've been using for the past 5 years. Okay, there were no policies set on that storage bucket. And guess what? Okay, there's this politician that you all know. I'm not going to mention his name, but you all know him. And he had a son. The son finished from university and decided that that was where he wanted to work. Guess what? They allowed him to work there. Now, we had closed for the day. Oh, at that time, I did not know that they did not set governance and policies on these resources. So we had closed for the day. Now, this guy, because of his father, no one could talk to him. Everybody was literally scared of him. He went and deleted the storage bucket that they've been using for more than 5 years. Okay. And guess what? He did not report himself. He 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 created another one to copy the original one. And and it meant that everything that they've been storing for the past years had gone away. So what I'm trying to say is that you see the effect of not adding policies and compliance. Not adding policies to whatever work you're doing. It messes things up. So the to cut the long story short, they learned the hard way. One way or the other, we had to go through extra backdoor to help them retrieve that storage bucket. It took quite a while, but in order not to allow these kind of things to happen, that was why we have decided today to give you an overview of what Azure policy is all about and compliance. So I'm sure that at the end of today's lecture, when you go back to your work, you'll ask yourself, are there policies on those workload? Okay, so when this the purpose this lesson will enable you ask smart questions so that you'll be helping the organization make the right decisions and take the right steps. So let's proceed. I'm going to be sharing my slide. Just give me a little. Yeah, I'm going to be sharing my slide with you. As you can see from the screen, I'm talking about overview of Azure policy. Hopefully I'll share from the slide and I'll play around. I'll go to Azure portal and also show you I hope you guys can see my slide.
It's
Okay,
not
so
up. It
first,
was up for a second, then it went back. Can you check again?
okay, so just give me a minute. I think here. Okay.
It's up now.
Okay, so I'm going to preview. If I share like this, I can see, but if I, okay. So basically I'm talking about Azure policies, okay? Just the next, just hold on. I want to make it big so that, okay, so just give me a minute, guys. I think, give me a minute. Give me a minute. I need to close my slide and open with PowerPoint slide. Just give me a minute, guys. See, just give me a minute. I'll be back with you. So while you're waiting for my slide to open, I like to keep the chat window busy. Tell me if this is the first time that you're playing with Azure, or how. Yeah, if you are new, if this is the first time you're using Azure, or you're hearing about Azure, or if you use it at your workplace or not. Okay, so my slide is opening. Okay, so yeah, just give me a minute. It's
So yeah, this is Daniel from Nigeria. Yeah, so I've been using Azure on the day to day, basically. Like I can relate to the example Emo just gave. Like yeah, it's policies are really important, especially for mission critical environments. So
mm.
yeah, it's a very good one you have there.
Thank you very much. Okay, so thank you for sharing with us. Guys, I'm sorry for the delay. We're going to proceed now. Okay, so what is an Azure policy? Okay, now Azure policy is a governance service. Okay, a governance service that enforces organizational standard and compliance across your resources. Now, I just give you an example of a government, a politician's son that worked on that came to work on a project that we're working on, and he made a very silly mistake because there were no policies and compliance requirements on those resources. Now, I'd like to give you another example. Now, let's assume, okay, now as you all know, now I'm sure that you all have used OPay. Okay, now the reason why everyone is excited about OPay is because of low latency. Okay, low latency. OPay has currently, as we speak, the lowest latency for any application in the country. If you doubt me, if you are in Nigeria, go and enter Bolt or Uber and ask them, what should I use to pay you? If you enter like 5 different Bolt or Uber, they will all tell you OPay. You know why? Because you send your money immediately, it goes immediately. Now, where am I going at? Now we can set a policy. Now OPay can set a policy. Now, I'm sure OPE did this. Now, OPE can set a policy and tell every of their organization, now, the workload, the resources that we are deploying, okay, let it target only people in this place. Now, the reason why you probably why OPE is working the way it's working, because they store they store the resource close to the customer, so it has the lowest. When resources are close to the customer, the latency is very low. Now, latency is the time it takes to travel from one point to another. Now, how will OPay be able to achieve that kind of feat? If they set a policy, for example, and I'm going to show you that from the Azure portal. They can set a policy, for example, and make it strict and say that they should only be the locations should only be the locations that have been chosen. Now, if anyone goes to make a mistake, or if anyone gets finger happy, okay, and goes to do anything, it will not work, because the policies have been set there that don't deploy. This is the region we are going to. Don't deploy to any other place apart from this. It will be strictly enforced. You see, now Azure policy will help you achieve all that. Now let's quickly take a look at let's quickly take a look at the slide. We've seen the definition. They will help us achieve organizational standard. Yeah. so that we comply with the regulations and everything. Now, you know that when it comes to enterprise workload, compliance with regulation is a very, very big deal. Let me give you another example. As you all know, now there is a policy. Maybe some of you don't know this. Now there is a policy that the central bank has given to every of these banks that customer uh, that customer workload should not be saved outside the country. So let's assume you are a cloud engineer and you go and get finger happy, and you deploy data, the bank's data that has the name, addresses. Yeah, of course, you know that most of these banks will use hybrid cloud. Okay, they will have their private and public cloud, but if you are a cloud engineer, you go and make that mistake and you go and put it in a place where it's not supposed to be, you're going to get the bank into trouble. So that's where compliance comes in. Now, if you are the CTO of the bank, in order to make sure that these mistakes do not occur, what do? You enforce those you enforce policy. So now I think that I've been able to share with you the importance of Azure policy. They make sure that people in the bank, the IT group, do not mistakenly go and do what is they're not supposed to do, so that the organization does not get into trouble. Let's quickly move ahead. Now, what are some of those features that we're going to be looking at in Azure Policy? What are some of the key features that Azure Policy has? Okay, they have, yeah, built-in policy. There are policies that are already built in. Like I mentioned earlier about location. Now, let's assume that we are deploying a workload and we want to serve the customers in Australia, for example, in a particular region in Australia. Now, I can enforce a policy that makes sure that nothing else happens. Okay, now, and I can also make sure I lock resources. So region, the location requirement is strict, resources are locked, you cannot delete by mistake. And also I can put yeah, you cannot delete by mistake, you can only read. So those, there are built-in policies inside Azure. And not only that, you can define your own policy. Okay, you can change whatever you need to change, define it so that you comply with whatever needs to be complied with. And one good thing about it, we can get reports in real time, and we can also see the policy initiatives. I think that at this point, I want to go to Azure Portal to show you how it looks like, so that so that it's not going to look like a big deal to you. Oh, Azure Policy, you can actually play with all these things and get used to it. So give me a minute. I'm going to be sharing my screen. I'm going to share my browser. I'm going to open my browser, portal.azure.com, and I'm just going to share. Just give me a minute. I'm trying to bring it up. Okay, so portal.azure.com. Now it's easy. Just type policy in your browser. Just type policy in your browser. Hit enter on your keyboard. Yeah, hit enter on your keyboard. You see that it's grayed out. Whatever you're looking for, the grayed out option is always 8. So click on policy. Yeah, you can see that. Let's assume this was an organizational account. You can see that whatever you're complying with, whatever you're not complying with, it even tells you. It says here that I have 10 things that are compliant and 10 that are non-compliant. And you can actually go, it gives you an overview of everything. You can actually go and make anything that you want to make. So let's click on compliance, for example. Let's see, that's what we just saw. Let's click on remediation. Okay, so let's define. Let's click on definition. So let's assume that we want to define a policy. I'm going to click on policy definition. Okay, so this is basic. Let's assume that it has to do with location. Okay, I think I had already clicked this. That's why this is coming. Okay, so I'm going to choose my subscription. I'm going to select my subscription. I can give it a name, location. Okay, so we can see that when you do this, it enforces all the rules that needs to be enforced. But I think I want to leave this. Let's say initiative. Okay, So you can actually come here and click on a policy. What kind of policy are you looking for? If it has to do with location, you can search any policy. There are built-in policies. You can, so you can actually add policy definition. Okay. Okay, so there are so many policies. Location is the easiest one we can work with as an example. So if I click on allowed locations, for example, and I add it as the one I'm looking for, okay, so if I click on next, okay, so if I click on this one, okay, so hold on. Okay, so I can give it a name. So in order not to waste time, so you can see that I've selected. Okay, so you can select a value. So you can see that Azure has built-in policies that you can just choose. We have the one for allowed locations. Now, if I go and choose, if I continue working on this, I can choose the location I want and use this on.
Hi
Just
everybody.
complete it.
Apology. Okay, Emmanuel, you're there. No problem.
Yeah.
Uh, I think we lost Raphael, so let's hold on when he's back.
The problem is network. Just left the chat.
Yes, so I think the participant can actually interact within this time because the policy, Azure policy is one of the ways to comply, to stay compliance, maybe with your organization policies and all that. So as you can see, Raphael is trying to share some light, deeper insight into how you can adapt it. So with Azure policies, you are able to restrict, like for instance, this is a real life example that I think I'm currently still on the project. So I have a project I'm working on and I'm using Azure Landing Zone. And the Azure Landing Zone already, I use it to define my identity network and the compute as well. So I also implemented a policy to restrict all the VM deploy from having a public IP address. And that actually has put in place some measures to control user access, our public access to those VMs. So for those who are just coming up on Azure, or even if you have been working with Azure before now, it is best practice for you not to allow any public access to your compute, be it a virtual machine. You can only do so when the condition requires it. So all these things are tied to policy. You can also, I believe the speaker is still going to shed more light on basic scoping levels and how you can scope the levels can scope your policies too. So you can scope policies to the management group, to the individual resources, to resource group, and to subscription. So scoping it to subscription govern the entire subscription. So I would like you to maybe, if you have done something in the past, maybe if you are currently on a project, you have something to share that's around Azure policy or Azure Blueprint. Of course, you can also share with the audience, depending when the speaker is back. So let's. So I have more of like a question and a contribution. Yeah, this is
Yeah,
Daniel. So yeah, as um the for the contribution part, yes, he was just trying to use the UI to deploy that policy. Also, you can also do it with script from the Azure CLI or from the this thing. So you can also run a script that was implement this restrictions or these policies, especially when you're interacting with large environments where you have to administer maybe like 2 million servers and what have you. So yeah, so that's for the contribution. So for the question, in situation where we have, okay, spoke about the CBN law that said that banks need to have data retention in their country where they have been registered, because I've had this kind of situation with I was working with a project with a South African partner, and they said that they want all our resources to be deployed on the Azure side to be deployed in South African region. Yeah. So that for data retention and all of that. But in the situation for Nigeria, there's no Nigeria Azure on your on the Azure portal. Yeah. It's not yet created. We have, I think it's AWS, but it's not Azure. So it's just kind of scenarios. What do we do? I mean, that forced to have a hybrid environment where we have to have um a local machine or find a local data center, or have our own local data center set up, and then having to administer that. Although that comes with its own CapEx costs and all of that. So like what's the workaround and all of that?
let me take
Okay.
that.
Do
Let
you
me
want
take
to
that.
try that?
Yeah, let me
Okay.
take that. So, hi, Daniel. Thank you for the question. Right, I currently work with a fintech, right? So, which the CBN policy also apply. So, what we do is that we have an hybrid scenario in which we have Azure, we have AWS, Mr. Raf is back, and we also have our on-prem data center. So, every of our production application that our customers interact with are on-prem. Our Azure and our AWS is just where we have our testing environment where we test. But the production applications, when the application is going to prod, is deployed on the VM on our on-premise server, in which that is also what other banks are also using. And we have connections to other banks because being a switching company that other banks, ATMs in Nigeria depends on, right? So every production applications to actually comply with CBN policies are deployed on-prem. But on Azure, all our Kubernetes clusters are on Azure as test. So just do our deployment, our testing environment. But for the production, is on-prem. Welcome back, Mr. Ralph. So we're just having an
Thank you very
interactive section here.
Yeah, thank you very much. So guys, I'm so sorry for the little issues my internet gave. Trying to open my slide again. So I've given you an overview of Azure Policy. They help you to achieve compliance at scale. They help you to make sure that there are no mistakes, there are no loose ends, there are no stories. Whatever happens, what you want to be enforced is strictly enforced. Okay, and there are custom definitions. There are already built definitions inside Azure Portal. So I'm just going to open my slide so that we'll continue from where we stopped. Okay, so let's quickly, yeah, so I've shown you this about the custom build policies and everything. Okay, so some use cases of Azure Policy, we can use it to enforce keyboard for sensitive data. Okay, so whenever there is a sensitive data, because you've already enforced the policies on the workload, it keyboards just quickly handles it. Now, it limits virtual machine deployment to specific regions, which is what I was trying to kind of show you before my internet went off. We can with Azure Policy, we can also automatically apply diagnostics whenever there is an issue. Things are diagnosed immediately so that it will enhance logging for that workload. Now, we've seen Azure Policy. Let's quickly talk about Azure landing zones. What are Azure landing zone? An Azure landing zone is a well-architected framework for building cloud environments that support scale, governance, and security. Okay, so you want to do things in a certain way that meets the way it's supposed to be done. That's why mostly you will use Azure landing zone. Now, it forms the foundational structure for hosting workload in Azure. Now, if you want to host anything in Azure, you need to just like you are trying to build a house. Okay. Now, when you build a house, you will have to the people building for you need to look at the plan, and they need to look if everything conforms with the rules and regulation and all that. So that's how a landing zone is as well. So it's yeah. Let's move to the next one. Let's move to the next slide and see. So what are some of the components that you're going to be seeing, that you will see in a typical landing zone? Now, a landing zone will have a management group. Now, you all know what a management group is. Now, in the hierarchy of things, management group would the order will come from management group and trickle down. Okay, so it will definitely have a management group to organize subscription into hierarchy for centralized policy management. Now, also a landing zone will have networking. So pre-configured hub and spoke virtual networks will be inside a typical landing zone. Then also we can't if I say this without adding identity management, now that would I won't be doing any good. As you all know, we can introduce it will also integrate with Azure Entra ID and all the necessary things that Azure has for identity management. Now, also a typical landing zone will have built-in firewalls, policies, and all that. Finally, a typical landing zone will also have will be integrated with Azure Monitor, Log Analytics, and Application Insights for observability. Okay, so let's quickly move ahead and see what else that we have to talk about with regards to this topic. Now, a landing zone would always follow the Microsoft Cloud Adoption Framework. Okay, so if you're working on anything and someone tells you something otherwise, know that it's out of the point. Okay, now Microsoft Cloud Adoption Framework provides a guidance, the guidelines, and the landing zone template to accelerate implementation. Now, it will also help us. We want to work with large scale enterprise workload. You actually need to have this. Okay, you need to have this. You need to have knowledge of this. Let's see how Azure Policy will enhance landing zone. So I've talked about Azure Policy earlier on and how they can help us. Without running into trouble. So number one is standardization. Policies enforce naming convention like tagging and consistent resource configuration. Now, if you put the policies there, there will be no mistakes. Okay, if you say that the resources should be deployed to a particular location, that is the location it will be. So landing zones, policy would always make our landing zone better. The security policies will ensure that we'll ensure that whatever needs to be encrypted will be encrypted. Whatever needs to be kept private will be kept private. Whatever you need strict enforcement and compliance on would have that. So as from where I'm already going, you can see that it's a good combination to have policy and landing zone together as a pack. Now, with regards to costs, okay, now you know that with if you've been keeping eyes on what has been happening in this space, I think about 3 years ago, a particular company came out and said they're not using the public cloud anymore because they're wasting money. Now, costs with regards to cloud is a very big deal. With the right policies in place, you can make sure that whatever is underutilized, whatever the right sizes is, you can make sure that everything yeah, everything is adhered to with regards to resource utilization, with regards to when something needs to be shut down, with regards to when quotas are met and all that and all that. So they will also help you a lot with regards to cost optimization and governance. Policies applied at management group level will make sure that everything is consistent throughout. Okay, so we're talking about governance. We will always look at management group, because at the hierarchy, management group is at the top. Everything you put at the management group trickles down. So let's take a look at the possible outcomes if you follow all these things that we've been talking about strictly. Number one, you will restrict deployment of non-compliant VM for cost control. Whatever is not complying with any policy, it would restrict their deployment. Whatever is not complying with wherever you say it should go to, it will not deploy it. Okay, so you won't fall into there will be no issue at the end of the day saying that your company have broken any law. Now, the way to make sure that laws are not broken, people don't get into trouble, yeah, the CTO does not have to go and start answering difficult questions, is to make sure that policies and compliance, yeah, is to make sure that these things are strictly adhered to. Okay, so someone is raising up his hand. If maybe you can quickly ask your question before we go on. Hello, Imo.
It's me. I just wanted to bring there's a question from Matthew.
Okay.
He asked, can Azure Policy landing zones be customized to have a project-wide application or national-wide application?
No, I didn't get it, but if I'm to, I didn't get the question in there, but
I think he's saying that he's trying to say if the policy, Azure policy that is applied to landing zones, landing zone framework, if it can be made to apply to only a subset of applications or organization or the organization.
Okay, this is how we'll take it. Okay, now this is not just for Azure alone, whether it's GCP, whether it's AWS, or there are always best practices that you need to follow. And best practices are the things that will always get you out of trouble at the end of the day. Now, if you work with the application development team and they are strict on compliance. Now, you all know that one thing I've come to understand from all my working life. Now, policy is policy. If you break a company policy, nothing will keep you for that. They will sack you. So just imagine company policy, you breaking it and they sack you. Now you're talking about the applications complying with industry standard. So these things will help you comply to organizational and industry standard. And I don't think anyone would, anything that makes you comply to those standards that keeps you in business, those are the things that you want to, those are the things that you want to stay with. So to cut the long story short, with regards to your question, is always a best practice to stick with policy and use policies, use landing zone for everything, because at the end of the day, they will help you, they will help the company stay in business, okay, without breaking any rule. I hope I've answered your question. Let me quickly continue with my slide so that we can.
Sorry to cut in, Raphael. I think Matthew, are you looking at the question in the angle of scope, policy scope, or do you just want to chip in something there?
Okay.
Can you unmute and speak?
Yes, I'm actually looking at this from the policy scope, because sometimes I know that there are some settings that might just apply to some projects, not an organization-wide setting.
Yes.
While there are some settings going to be organization-wide. So that's just the clarity I needed.
Okay, so the clarity is that you can apply Azure policy on the individual resources. And for instance, if you are working on a Kubernetes project, let's say you are using Azure Kubernetes in particular, you can apply a policy to restrict or maybe to exempt that deployment, to exempt the deployment. That's what they call a policy exception, which can exempt the people working on AKS projects. This will provide flexibility, but note, it is not best practice to always exempt in some situation. So you can exempt them or you can include. So you can scope it to individual projects. Okay, people working with this EKS project, these are what they should do. These are not what they should do. And you can also make it organizational wide. So I hope that's clear. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that, Imo. But like I said earlier on, for me, as all throughout my working life, I think that you'll always get more points if you do things that always follow best practice. You'll always you put the company out of trouble, you put yourself out of trouble, so that there are no mistakes. So no matter what, whatever it will take, always make sure that your projects are complying with the best practices. And Azure policies and the landing zone will always get you out of trouble at any time. Okay, so let's continue. So let's assume that you forgot to do backup. Okay, maybe you forgot because you use the landing zone, everything will have to comply, and you would, yeah, everything will have to comply. Okay, so that's why I think that whatever you're doing, always make sure that yeah. So what are some of the benefits of combining? I talked about this earlier on. So what are some of the benefits that we'll look at when we combine policies with landing zone? You will have unified governance. Okay. So whether your workload is in production, is in test, is in development phase, everything will have unified. Everything will be centralized across all your workload. Now, automation, we can use automation to remediate non-compliant resources with a deploy if policy does not exist. Okay, I like this one a lot. And yeah, so whatever you are deploying automatically, if you say, okay, if the policy is not there, just like what I think the question that you were asking, okay, so if whatever it's not having policy, don't deploy. Okay, so visibility also, there's a dashboard for monitoring compliance. Like when I showed you the policy dashboard the other time, you can see that it showed the number of items that are compliant and non-compliant items. Now, they will also help you to onboard a workload very faster, because anything that you put in the management group, it automatically inherits all the policies that will trickle down. Okay, so now, reduce risk. Okay, so you can guide against unauthorized changes and non-compliant deployment. So still cut the long story short, this gets you out of trouble at any time. Okay. Now let's take a look. I think when I was trying to show you the Azure portal the other time, you saw how an example of a definition will look like. So this is how a typical definition will look like. So the policy rule, if, so let's assume it's with tags. Okay, so you can see that the field is tags. If it exists false, then in effect deny. Okay, so this will ensure that everything is traceable and you can manage everything that has been labeled correctly. Okay, now let's take a look at another example. With regards to network, okay, if you apply these policies, it will make sure that you disallow, the policies that have been inherited from the management group will make sure that all public IP addresses on the VMs are disallowed. No, so these policies would improve security posture, and also they will also block non-compliance workload. So I think I've said this earlier on, but you can see that Azure policy and landing zones, still, like I said before, they will get you out of trouble. They will keep whatever you're doing compliant. Okay. Another example that policies can use to help you out, if they will automatically got backups for all your databases. So if you are the kind of person that is not careful enough, that maybe you will forget something, you forget to do something, you better use these things, because they will automatically make sure that everything that needs to be done is done. Okay, now it will ensure that all the databases have geo-redundant backup enabled, so that yes, so let's, I think we are in the final part of the lesson, okay? So let's take a look at the typical architecture of a landing zone. Okay, so I think earlier on I spoke about the components of a landing zone, but let's take a look at it from this point. Then I'll show you a little diagram that I've been able to get together in my slide. Definitely, as you all know, we need to have a subscription. We can have dev, prod, test, different subscription to handle different workload. Now, the management group is where we are going to put the policies, because it will trickle down to the resources. So we'll have subscription there. We'll have management group. Definitely, we need networking. So hub and spoke networking. Then we have shared services like login, identity, and the others. Okay. So if we look at those components that I've just explained, I broke it down into two because the slide could not take everything. So we can see that in the management group, we can divide the business units and put the different subscriptions in the management group. We can put another different subscription. Okay, so we can put another set in a different business unit, and we can see for the hub and spoke how it has separated it. Yeah, so we just like this as well. So this will be a typical, if I'm asked to design a landing zone, I'll definitely break it down like this: management group, the networking side, then the networking side, so that, yeah. So I'm going to be concluding this. I think I have 1 minute left or 6 minutes left. So I'm going to be concluding this by saying that Azure Policy would help you stick to the necessary rules and regulation that needs to be adhered to. Okay, it will make you not to make mistakes. Okay, it will make sure that you comply to organizational policy, especially if those policies are a big deal, especially if you need to keep to certain requirements. Then landing zone will help you establish secure, compliant environment for your workload, so that if you are the kind of person that forgets, when you have all these things, everything is just there. Okay, you do not make any mistake. Now, finally, when you combine the two together, they will enable streamlined cloud adoption framework with reducing the risk reducing any risks that might occur, and make sure that whatever you're doing is always following compliance and the necessary requirements, and your company will always stay in business, because it will be hard to break any rules when you use Azure Policy and you use landing zones. Okay, let's take a look at So if you're gonna be studying later on, if you wanna do some research, this is where I would ask you to go, because Microsoft, I like Microsoft a lot. It's not just Microsoft. The first point of call for anything with regards to cloud is the documentation. So I'm going to encourage you to take a look at the documentation, and not only that, take a look at the cloud adoption framework and try and play with all these things and see how it goes. Okay, so I think I have just 4 more minutes. So this is the point where I ask, if you have any question, please throw it open so that I answer it. If not, this is where it ends. Okay, so in a nutshell, it's actually important to adopt these technologies, because they will keep you out of trouble as an engineer, because you won't be in a position to say, okay, you deployed a workload that is non-compliant. Okay, so if you enforce this, you won't make that mistake. So if you work in a team that have not started enforcing all these things, now here is me telling you that in your weekly stand-up meetings, you need to suggest to them, because it will keep you out of trouble. Thank you very much. If you have a question, throw it open. If not, I'm handing it over to Emmanuel Itoje.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ra, for that amazing session. I mean, that's actually an eye-opener for me as a person. Thank you so much. Guys, if you have questions, please either you drop in the chat or raise up your hands. Then I'll call you to unmute your mic and ask your question. Do you have any questions? Do we have any questions so far? So I'm going through the chat if there are questions. Okay, Matthew, please go ahead with your question.
Okay, thank you very much, Raphael, for this wonderful presentation and learning opportunity too. There's something very well, mine might not just be a question, just to make a particular statement. You know, you keep emphasizing to keep yourself out of trouble, which is very critical for critical infrastructures. One thing I am looking at, and that I would say I have seen brighter or paid more attention to, is the aspect of ensuring an individual, or ensuring, probably let me say an engineer, pay attention to the organizational policy and deploy whatever you want to deploy in accordance with the organizational policy. Previously, I asked about the fact of probably some projects or some resources being given some exemption. However, I would want to now further ask that, if is there this provision under Azure in which there's going to be a project or there's going to be a resources to be deployed, and that resources is going to function in such a way that it might not go alongside one of the policies of the organization? Is I know sometimes these policies could be automated, that once these policies are in place, you can't carry out any action. For instance, deploy a VM with a public IP. You would not be able to do it because there's a policy in place that disallow deployment of VMs with public IP. Now, if a particular project or a particular resources might need, probably just for a single action, to carry out a procedure which the organizational policy does not allow, is there any way around it for an Azure project or for a project deployed on Azure?
Okay, so this is what I would say. Okay, now for every project, there's always a team. Okay, and for every team, there's always a leader, and at the end of the day, there's always a CTO to report to. Now, you cannot work alone. And one thing you should always understand is that there are custom definitions. You can actually anything you want. There are custom definitions. You can go there and add anything that you want. But at the end of the day, the thing is, don't make decision alone. So long as you can carry your supervisor along, the CTO knows about it. The critical people that needs to make decisions know about it. I think that you can do anything and define your own rules. Imo, I'd like you to contribute to that.
Okay, just to add to that, Matthew. So there is what they call policy exception. So no matter what happened, no matter the policy in place, there's always be a policy exception to allow the deployment of certain or the overriding of certain policies. Like I said, I had a scenario where we also disallowed the use of public IP address on all our compute. But when there was need for it, we have to create exception for all those VMs. So policy exceptions are there to allow that. Is that clear?
Yeah, thank you very much. Very, very clear. Thank you very much. Yeah.
You're welcome.
Guys, do you have more
So
questions?
just to share, before when Raphael was a little bit off, we had some discussion around Mazi. I think Daniel was asking around where you were trying to answer
Yes,
when you
CBN,
were
yes.
explaining. So another way is that what if company does not want to go on-prem at all, Emmanuel? In that case, now I don't want to do anything on-prem. I want to use my Azure for testing, dev, and production and prod. So what should I do when I find myself in a country like Nigeria where we don't have any data center within the country, and I'm to also comply with CBN policies that says data must stay within Nigeria? So now let me just contribute to that. In that case, we have a lot of co-location in Lagos, Nigeria. I know for sure that Main One is one of the Microsoft partners that co-locates data centers. We also have MTN. So now what I most time when I consult for customers who found themselves in that case, because of course, a lot of companies want to benefit from the cloud because of the scalability and the speed, everything. So rather than incurring CapEx expense on buying a lot of servers, So you can collocate your data center to any of those guys I just mentioned, Main 1, MTN. They are now using express route to connect directly to MTN backbone network. So the data stay within Nigeria, and it does not transfer over the internet. And a lot of things that happen when you happen to find yourself in that way, Microsoft recommend that you deploy your resources through service endpoint and public and private endpoint. So although service endpoint most time always expose your resource to the public internet. So when it happens like that, fall back to private endpoint. Let all your databases be on private endpoint. And also remember there is also what you can use, a VPN peering. VNet peering. You can also pair your virtual network such a way that one will talk to another in different regions, and everything can also be tied to. And don't forget, you can also use what's it called, side-to-side VPN. You can also use point-to-point VPN and point-to-side VPN. So all these things help you to avoid being exposed directly to the internet. So there are several methods, there are several means, there are several resources Microsoft has put in place that can help you secure your user data from exposing to the internet. Like I said, always remember that you can partner with a lot of company partner with Main 1 and know for sure to actually stay within the country. So that's my contribution to that, Daniel.
Sorry, I didn't get the name of the company you talked about. Other companies partner with to make sure they have a localization of data.
We have Main 1. Do you know about Main 1?
Now Equinox.
Equinox now, but the primary company is still Main 1. Now we also have MTN too. No, sorry, yes, MTN, and we also have African Data Center. We have African Data Center. We also have Cyber Cloud. Cyber Cloud is owned by Cyberspace. I'm sorry, I'm trying to mention their name, but then this company have co-location within the country, within Nigeria. So that's just what I have to.
All right, thank you so much, Imo.
You're welcome. Okay, so Emmanuel, I think the floor is yours now.
All right, thank you so much, Emma, for your contribution, and thank you, Mr. Raf, for that presentation once again. So I'm hoping we'll have more questions. So because we still have about 8 more minutes for us to interact about cloud adoption framework and Azure Work Architecture framework also. So all right, Matthew, go ahead with your question.
Okay, well, I think it's also a learning platform for us, and probably if we could share our thoughts concerning the scenario that the speaker spoke about. And I also read about it where some companies decided that they were going off cloud and they are spending more than they thought they would spend. Can we think, or can we assume that sometimes why organization get themselves into this scenario in which they felt cloud would benefit them, and at the end of the day they are spending much more and not profitable with cloud? Could it be a poor architectural approach or poor architectural framework, or probably they did not engage, let me say, a good solution architect or a good cloud architect before they embark on such cloud project, or before they start deploying into the cloud? Could that be the reason? I just wanted us to just probably shed some light around this.
All right, Matt, you have to go for that.
Okay, so yes, let me just attempt that. So now the thing is that when an organization is trying to migrate to cloud, it is always very much important that they have an expert solution architect in place. The work of a solution architect is to help set out best practices. First of all, assess the resources. So if you understand the readiness of those resources, whether before they move to cloud. There are some resources like the databases, some servers that are not reached the maturity level to go to the cloud. So such resource, if you move to the cloud, you are simply wasting money. Another thing is that if you Microsoft has what they call Azure Migrate. Azure Migrate help you to actually assess the existing servers and understand their readiness. It will give you everything about that server. Then once you see, it could be on as a result of underutilization of your on-premises server. I saw some servers that when I carried out assessment, I saw them, they have like 84 gig of RAM, only 16 is used. So in that case, the customer is simply wasting money. I know that if he moves to the cloud, you can always use the component of scalability to scale it whenever the demand is high. So instead of having to jam pack that server there, so you need to engage a professional solution architect. You also need to carry out, there's what they call TCO and Azure pricing calculator. The TCO will give you the total cost of ownership. You make it to understand the overall spending that you're currently having now before you move to the cloud. So if you understand, if you use the CTO tool to understand how much you are spending and how much you will spend in the cloud, so that will help you to determine if staying on-prem will help you save costs or going to the cloud will help you save costs. So that's a few contributions. There are more other options for you to explore. I think, Matthew, is that clear?
Yes, very clear. Very, very okay. Yeah, very okay. Thank you.
I think we have Jacob hand up.
Yes, Jacob, go ahead, please.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. So I overheard what Mr. Emmanuel said the other time, that you're working with one of the fintech, and recently last month, I mean, with this moment, we're having some challenging with some banks. I mean, like Sterling Bank, GTB, and like Girls, Stanbic, and also. So I based on my research, when people talking, Nigeria now, they begin to talk a lot of things. They are having issue of hacking or something like that. So I quickly, like, let me have my own research and let me know little. So, and when we are talking about we're talking about the policy and about the data and all that stuff, not to going out the region, I mean, the Nigeria organization, I mean, the Nigeria entirely. So, and I, based on my own research and what I know, which is, I will briefly, I will just say something. So I noticed that most of the bank in Nigeria are on-premise environments, and then they have the core banking application, entire organization that hosts. So, which I believe they host those guys in Nigeria here before. But now, recently, based on I don't know much about it, but based on what really going on, they said the Sterling Bank introduced banks. So, which they moved their application, I mean, their core banking application to that CBAS, and so that's what transfer of having issue recently with some banks. So some bank as at last month. So now my point of view now is, does it mean that CBAS is sit in Nigeria data center, or because I'm pretty sure based on the research and based on the question I've been asking, they said that even that bank now it's the first in Africa, entire Africa now, because all the application for banking sector are using normally have a provider outside the country that they will subscribe for. So, and then because of the FX and other stuff, so they've been paying the money in the dollar, so they have to move back to the Africa and then to be able to be paying naira and other things. So I'm now like, based on the CBN policy, that the data and the other stuff should be within the country. So my concern now, are we now saying that all these application, I mean, the host of this CBAS now, are they hosted in Nigeria? I mean, because of this, because if it's hosted outside the country, are we now saying our data is still within the country? So I don't know, maybe you know much about it so that we can shed light more. Thank you.
All right, Jacob, thank you very much for the question. I mean, Imo, do you know much about the banking application SIBA?
No, I don't. I'm just hearing the name. Is it SIBA? SIBA, right?
Yeah.
But overall, to my own understanding, most of in such scenario, what organization does is to just do most of them establish VPN connectivity to the major cloud providers. Most of the organization you see them running, I say the data is beside, they are having a backup with a cloud provider like Microsoft or AWS or GCP. So it's just a matter of using the secure way of connecting to the cloud provider environment.
So Daniel, for me, I'm not sure where the application, I'm even just hearing the name for the first time. Do I know that most of the banks are doing migration, they're migrating from the core banking final code to another system, which you just mentioned the name, I'm not sure about that. So if possible, if the application is hosted on cloud, on-prem, I'm not sure. But for today, what I know from most banks is that they actually use an hybrid, but more of on-prem, right? Like where I work to, we are 80% on-prem and 20% cloud, like I mentioned. So those applications probably in terms of their migration plan, there was no proper planning, right? Because for every migration that should happen, there should be like a change request that will actually go. And when you're migrating anything, you look at, okay, what are the implications of this? You try to look at both the positive and the negative side of the migration so that in case it didn't go as planned, what are the rollback plans that you have? Or is there a possibility that those two applications can run concurrently in case as you're migrating those data, is it possible that the current one that you're still using, you can still use them to service your customer while the migration is going, or you just totally, do a plan? Yeah, Mr. Raf, go ahead, please. You're talking on mute, actually.
On mute. Okay, so I've had the privilege of working with a team of experts from CBN. Okay, now CBN is very big on you following their policies. Now, as you all know, the license to own a bank is, guess what? Currently, as we speak, 500 billion naira, and they will do anything to make sure that your money goes away. So one of the laws they gave, no matter. So what I'm trying to say is that I believe that